Since this is a national program and not everyone is from our region, I wanted to give a little background before I introduce the speakers, as to why the DC, Maryland, Virginia group is presenting together. So what you're looking at on your screen is a kind of a cutout of the Potomac River watershed. And you'll see on the northeast side is Maryland, the south west side is Virginia, and kind of that red smattering in the middle is DC. And then the blue squiggle line in the middle is the Potomac River. So we are all along the Potomac River. We all rely on the Potomac River for drinking water. And so it really is a communal resource. And so we have taken this issue and worked together strongly over the past 5-10 years to address the issue because we are all downstream of somebody. So it's been a very regional effort. So it's not just a state effort around here. And also what you're looking at is the past 80 years of chloride levels in the Potomac River. The x-axis is the year starting in 1940 going through 2019. And the y-axis is the month of the year. December is on the bottom and January is on the top. You'll see back in 1940, the chloride levels were very low. There was not a lot of detection of chloride. Starting in the 1960s, you're seeing a little bit more in the winter months, the top level and the bottom level, December, January time. And now closer to the right side of that graph, you're seeing a lot more chloride. The darker blue, the higher the chloride levels. And you're not just seeing them in the winter, you're seeing it all through the year. So that's why we are concerned about this issue. So with that, I want to introduce our speakers for today. Try to give you the big, broad overview of why we're working together. And now we're going to learn from each of our regional governments what they're doing and organizations. So I'm going to give a quick background for each speaker, and then I'll just pass it on to the speakers and let them talk. Rebecca Murphy is the Coastal Program Manager at Northern Virginia Regional Commission, where she works to advance coastal resources management in Northern Virginia through coordination with local jurisdictions on issues including water quality, coastal hazards, and ecosystem conservation, as well as representation on statewide committees for coastal and Chesapeake Bay protection and restoration. Prior to joining NVRC, she led local and regional watershed management and community engagement efforts through work with nonprofit organizations in Maryland and the Carolinas. And Rebecca is going to turn it over to Jason Swope, who is the Maryland, DC, and West Virginia coordinator for the Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professional Certification Program, where he works as part of a team to provide conservation, landscaping, and green stormwater infrastructure maintenance training. And then Jason will turn it over to Allison Lee, who is a water resources engineer with the Center for Watershed Protection. CWP is a national nonprofit organization with staff experienced in research, training, membership, and watershed and stormwater services. It's a true pleasure to work with this group, and I'm really excited that you get to hear from them today. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca Murphy.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me here to speak today as a part of Winter Salt Week. Again, my name is Rebecca Murphy, and I'm the Coastal Program Manager at the Northern Virginia Regional Commission. I'm going to give a presentation on the Northern Virginia salt management strategy. And Renee, it looks like some of the slides are moving through there we go. Or SAMs, and programming to support the implementation of this strategy in their region and beyond. So I'm going to start off by providing an overview of SAMs, including its goals and development, and then share some of its ongoing implementation activities over the past year or so. So as a brief background to NVRC, we're a regional council of 13 local governments spanning from Prince William County up to Loudoun County in the Northern Virginia suburbs of Washington, D.C., as you can see on the map to the right. And we represent one of 21 planning districts within Virginia. If you're not familiar with a planning district or a PDC, really our goal is to be able to facilitate local to state level coordination and address issues or topics that cover multiple jurisdictions and can be addressed at a regional scale, such as winter salt. And with that, NVRC is a political subdivision or a government agency within the Commonwealth, and we have programs ranging from health and human services all the way down to environmental programming, as you can see on the slide. And as I start off here, I think something important to be able to note is that as many people know, Northern Virginia is an incredibly urbanized region. We have over 2.5 million residents, and this is continuing to rapidly grow. And with decade data back in 2016, over 25% of our land cover was impervious, about a quarter of which was for residential and a quarter for transportation land uses. Next slide. And so as you can imagine, with a lot of impervious land cover, think concrete, buildings, roads, etc., comes the need for effective snow and ice maintenance. So all in all, this equals a lot of land in the region that's likely to be salted to protect our residents, commuters, emergency vehicles, amongst many other groups that need safe conditions to be able to get around, continue operating in the winter months, etc. And so with increases in salt application, we are seeing the intensification of adverse impacts on our natural and built environment. I know this has been discussed pretty heavily throughout Winter Salt Week, but one example that I did want to show is from the Occoquan Reservoir, which serves as the primary or one of the primary sources of drinking water in the region. So on the slide there, you can see a steady increase in sodium levels in that reservoir from that 1980s to present. And this is continuing to grow and having, again, impacts on our health, on the environment, and leading to very costly maintenance for the watershed in the future. And so with that being said, when we think about winter salt application in Northern Virginia, we try to have a balanced approach to this. Again, we recognize the region needs to be able to have public safety and economic activity, but we also want to limit excess salt use due to its impacts on our infrastructure, on our environment, and on our drinking water systems. So next slide. And so with this in mind, now I want to zoom into the Accotink Creek watershed. Again, this is a highly urbanized area of Northern Virginia that you can see on the map. If you can go back one slide, I think maybe it might be on a timer, so I apologize, Renee. But back in 2015, water quality monitoring in the watershed indicated that chloride or salt was one of the most probable stressors to biological communities in the watershed. And then an additional study conducted in 2016 highlighted that chloride, or again, salt levels, exceeded Virginia's water quality standards for aquatic life. So based off of these findings for the watershed, the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, or DEQ, set pollution limitations, or what we call total maximum daily loads, TMDLs, for salt or chloride in Accotink watershed in 2017, and this was approved by EPA in 2018. If you're not familiar with a TMDL, essentially they create a pollution diet by determining how much certain types of pollution can enter a water body, and then creating goals to reduce those pollutants, again, such as salt, to make sure that the waterway is safe for humans and wildlife. And this is really important for Virginia because this was actually the first TMDL within the Commonwealth. So it really allowed NVRC and Northern Virginia to be able to steer the way in how we address salt loads for the state. And next slide. So with these pollution limits in place, Virginia, DEQ, and other stakeholders came to the conclusion that the most effective way to be able to address these salt loads within the TMDL would be through a wide range of best management practices. And through this, we created, again, the Virginia Salt Management Strategy, or SAMS, as a non-regulatory, voluntary, and proactive approach to reducing salt impacts in, again, Accotink Creek watershed, as well as the broader Northern Virginia region. And so taking this approach to implementation, a ton of stakeholders taking part in its development over a 2-year period, groups ranging from government entities and nonprofits to businesses and those that were winter salt providers. So the process took, again, about 2 years, and really it took shape into what we call our SAMS toolkit. And this provides a broad range of practices, again, meant to cater to anybody from a winter maintenance professional to the general public, with various tools and resources to be able to address winter salt. One thing that I do like to be able to highlight within the toolkit that you can see on the slide here is it lists out all these best management practices. But because this is a proactive approach within the region, it was really essential that we had some sort of incentive for individuals to be able to implement these practices. So you can see on the graph, again, it has the BMPs in the blue there, but it also highlights the different cost savings for individuals to be able to take these practices and understand how, you might not care about the environment and that impact, but most people do care about their wallet and what that means for them in the future as well. And it also highlights partnership opportunities, other ways to be able to collaborate on this in a well-rounded approach. So the toolkit was finalized in 2020, and then NBRC became the primary facilitator for toolkit implementation. And next slide. And so now I'm going to talk a little bit about what that implementation has looked like over the past few years. First, I want to talk about the Northern Virginia Clean Water Partners, which is a group of about 20 local governments, water and sanitation authorities, such as Fairfax Water, Loudoun Water, and Prince William Water, public schools and businesses within Northern Virginia. And as a whole, the program focuses on improving residents' knowledge and behaviors around stormwater pollution. And it also meets the locality's multiple separate storm sewer system, it's a mouthful, MS4 permits, to be able to essentially have education and outreach strategies around limiting stormwater pollution in their locality. And this is paid for by those partners through annual dues based off of population size. And so this program is really beneficial to SAM's implementation because it not only provides a number of different ways to be able to improve residents' knowledge and behaviors around salt use, but it also provides a means for us to be able to track that implementation as well. So we do metric tracking on our social media pages that I'll highlight in a moment, but we also do an annual survey to about 500 residents, asking their opinions and knowledge and behaviors, et cetera, on different pollutants, including winter salt. So you can see in our most recent survey in 2024, we asked when residents applied de-icer for storm events. And we found out that about an equal number apply it before and after storms. So this really helps us to understand what type of messaging we need to have, again, within our social media and our advertising to be able to improve behavior and improve knowledge around, how they should be applying winter salt after a storm. So next slide. And to be able to reach residents, the partners have a wide range of outreach mechanisms, as you can see on the slide there. This includes social media pages like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and X. And we also do TV advertisements, radio advertisements, etc. One thing I do want to highlight here is we have a website called onlyrain.org, and this is for individuals to find resources, as well as understand some of the work that our partners are doing at a local level to take action against these different stormwater pollutants. And so overall, we've taken a really well-rounded approach to reaching residents because we recognize that some individuals do not use social media, some don't watch television. That way we can reach them through local events, physical education materials, etc. And I will say this program as a whole has really evolved over time with the development of social media, ways that we can have online advertisements, that sort of thing. So it is continuously growing, but it offers a great opportunity for us to be able to reach residents around winter salt in a number of different means. So next slide. And then in addition to public outreach and education, the SAMS toolkit also focuses very strongly on improving the knowledge and practices of winter snow and ice professionals. So this might include a property manager, but this also includes private contractors. So individuals that manage snow and ice removal for parking lots, sidewalks, other surfaces for commercial properties, HOAs, really non-residential forms of property. And they play a really significant role in the amount of salt that ends up in our local waterways every winter, depending on the type of contract and policy that is included. So NVRC received funding in 2022 to host a day-long training program on winter salt management practices. It was facilitated by AMT Engineering, and you can see the 4 different modules that were included in this. Overall, we found this to be a really helpful means to be able to really dig into these best management practices with private contractors. And then following the day-long event, we also had a condensed training video for those that weren't able to participate. So that is a public resource at this point, but it is also helpful on NVRC's side to be able to get perspectives from applicators on some of their barriers to BMP, best management practice implementation, such as the costs for new equipment, community opinions, other reasons that they might be hesitant to apply less salt in their neighborhoods. Next slide. And I also just now want to highlight some of the general NVRC resources that we've created over the past couple of years. NVRC leads a Northern Virginia winter salt outreach coordination group where we meet on a monthly to quarterly basis and discuss, ways that we can collaborate and not necessarily have to reinvent the wheel around our SALT communications. And so some of the outcomes from that include resident snow and ice maintenance tip sheets. One of our jurisdictions, Fairfax County, translated this into over 7 different languages. And then also things like the HOA winter salt resource sheet, which highlights activities that HOAs can accomplish. And next slide. And I also just briefly want to highlight that it is not just NVRC, this is a regional effort. So our localities have a number of different practices from stream water quality monitoring, very comprehensive winter snow operations training and their own local outreach in addition to things that like a snowplow naming and tracking system that we see in Arlington County. So they do so much wonderful work as well that I couldn't not highlight some of the activities that they're completing too. Last slide. And lastly, just some ways to stay involved. And I think some of these resources will be put in the chat as well. Visiting wintersaltsmart.com, as well as the Only Rain website, where you can find some additional resources to stay involved with NVRCs as well as the Clean Water Partners programming. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions from the chat at the end, but now I want to pass it over to Jason Swope, who will be on the Maryland side talking about their smart salting training. So Jason, I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Rebecca. Today, I'm going to be sharing some information about the Maryland Smart Salting Voluntary Certification Program. And this Smart Salting Enhanced Winter Maintenance Training Series was developed through a partnership with the Maryland Department of the Environment, the University of Maryland Environmental Finance Center, and the Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professional Program. The program was developed as a pilot training course in 2023, and we just completed a second year of training in November and December of 2024. Each of those partner organizations contributed in a different manner to the program. The Maryland Department of the Environment spearheaded the project and oversaw the writing of this enhanced winter maintenance training manual. And the University of Maryland Environmental Finance Center helped develop the training program. And they also have an online teaching platform for hosting the e-learning modules that we developed, and they manage the registration and course logistics for the training as well. And the Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professional Program developed the e-learning modules and provided a lead instructor with industry experience to serve as a subject matter expert. So just real briefly, a bit of background on chloride reduction efforts in Maryland. The Maryland Department of the Environment has addressed salt pollution in its recent MS4 permits, which requires local jurisdictions to develop a salt management plan and train their winter weather operations staff on salting best practices. And MDE worked with fellow state agencies such as the Maryland Department of Transportation and the State Highway Administration to reduce the amount of salt applied on roadways. But it was also recognized that there are many winter weather maintenance professionals applying road salts on private properties throughout the state. So in order to improve salt reduction efforts in Maryland and reach those companies and individuals applying ice melters on private properties, the Maryland Department of the Environment partnered with the Interstate Commission on the Potomac River Basin to develop a guide for winter maintenance best practices. And you can download a copy of this manual. It is available for free through the QR code link on your screen. And maybe we can also share that link in the chat. But it is available for a free download. The Maryland Smart Salting Enhanced Winter Maintenance Training Program is based on this manual. And the program addresses salt pollution on parking lots, driveways, and sidewalks. It's a voluntary statewide road salt certification program that is targeted to private applicators and aims to balance the safety and mobility of people during winter weather months with improving application practices. So the training manual is separated into 6 modules, and these modules provide a pathway for participants to understand smart salting best practices and how these practices can be implemented. Although it starts with pre-season planning and works through to storm operations and end of season actions. We used a blended learning module for this training program, and that combines self-paced individual learning and group instruction along with the practical hands-on calibration training sessions. So each participant is required to read each of the 6 modules in the manual and view the 6 online e-learning modules. Each e-learning module reviews the information in the corresponding chapters of the manual, and each e-learning module includes quizzes which must be completed to proceed to the next module. Participants are also asked to attend 2 virtual discussion forums, and it's during those discussion forums that participants discuss their experiences with the homework assignment that we provide for that discussion forum, and we participate in conversations about specific key learning points from each of the modules in the manual. And then, as I said, each participant is also required to attend that hands-on calibration training session. And lastly, in order to become certified, each participant, once they've completed all of these requirements that are shown on your screen, they're required to take a 50-question multiple choice exam and receive a passing grade of 75% in order to receive certification. So we start by providing participants with information on why we should be concerned about excess salts in the environment. And as we move through the manual and the e-learning modules, participants learn what smart salting practices are and how to implement those smart salting practices. Participants learn about the negative impacts of salt as it relates to our drinking water supplies and human health. And we also discuss the corrosive nature of salts and how that leads to infrastructure and property damage. Additionally, we cover and talk about how salts can negatively impact the environment. Participants learn that de-icers misapplied or running off of the application area can damage or kill plants and aquatic life, and that excess sodium can also change soil structure. Throughout these modules and discussion forums, we really try to emphasize that the there's a lot of smart salting practices, but they can kind of be lumped into 4 general areas. And we've identified these 4 smart salting practices in general as focusing on manual removal versus material usage, using existing equipment and thinking about new equipment purchases or upgrades that might improve your salt application practices so that we're reducing the amount of ice melters applied. But we want to do that in a manner, we understand that safety is still #1 priority, and we want to maintain safety during winter weather events, but we want to do it in a way that prevents the waste and inefficiency of over applications. And we go into great detail about what these best practices are and how they can be implemented. We discuss what the different types of ice melters are and how they can be applied. And throughout the training, we have a special emphasis on equipment upgrades to improve applications, such as shields on spreaders or pre-wetting kits for truck spreaders. And we talk a lot about the advantages of brine applications and encourage contractors to consider adding a brine applicator to their equipment as they move into the future with smart salting practices. And in addition to talking about those different ice melters, we cover what those advantages and disadvantages and limitations are to the different ice melt products and the different ways in which these products can be applied. And that's just in the first 1 or 2 modules. Once we move into modules 3 and 4, we discuss how these smart salting practices are implemented. Participants learn how they can create a site plan and how to calculate, what your application rates are for different areas on your property. And when we get into module 5, that's really a core part of the program. We're really focusing on storm events and the decision-making process for ice melter applications. And we emphasize that ice melter application rates should be unique for each individual weather event. And we provide application rate charts, which are based on these weather and temperature conditions during a weather event. And once we get into module 6, we cover post-storm best practices such as cleanups of spills, recognizing over applications, and also equipment maintenance and the importance of accurate record keeping. And within the manual, especially as we're emphasizing record keeping, but also with the application rate charts, we provide several different templates which participants can use and adapt to their own organization. So these are just some examples of some record keeping templates that are provided within the manual. And we really emphasize that smart salting, it's not just something that's done during a winter weather event, but it's really a year-round process that starts with preseason activities and goes through training your staff, creating a site plan, and then we talk again about those decision-making processes during weather events, and we cover those post-storm actions. So we really emphasize it's a year-round process, and we also emphasize the importance, we also emphasize the importance of adaptive management in which we're developing a smart salting plan and we're following that plan, but then we're evaluating and updating the plan as needed throughout the year. And then lastly, the smart salting enhanced winter maintenance training culminates with an equipment calibration day where participants learn how and go through the process of calibrating a walk behind push spreader, a brine sprayer, and a truck salt spreader. And when we have these workshops, we also engage with other industry professionals so they can share their equipment knowledge, and they help us out with the calibration training. And our surveys of participants indicated that they all found the equipment calibration training to be extremely valuable. And they indicated that the training was relevant for their winter weather responsibilities. And as I said, we now have about 100 smart salt certified applicators in Maryland. And as we're looking forward to 2025, we want to continue to revise and improve our e-learning modules. And we're working hard to implement a really targeted recruitment program throughout the year so that we can increase awareness of the program and the number of participants that are attending smart salting training. Along that lines, we've developed an online informational page, which allows participants to sign up for updates and emails about upcoming smart salting certification opportunities. And you can find that informational page through the QR code, and hopefully we can share that website link in the chat as well. And we're also hoping to continue developing relationships with other regional stakeholders by sharing information about our training program and collaborating these training efforts on a regional basis, which is really why I'm here today. And I appreciate the opportunity to share this information with you. And thanks for your time. I think now I'm going to hand over the spotlight to Allison Lee with the Center for Watershed Protection.
Thanks, Jason. Just to reintroduce myself, I am Allison Lee. I'm a water resources engineer with the Center for Watershed Protection, and I'll be speaking about a smart salting training that was developed for Washington, D.C. So just to start with a little bit of background on the district and their winter maintenance responsibilities, they are responsible for over 4,000 lane miles of road, as well as sidewalks, trails, and facilities. And the district also has a population of over 700,000. And the folks responsible for clearing out the streets of snow and ice are known as the District Snow Team, which is led by the Department of Public Works, or DPW, with assistance from multiple DC agencies. Next slide. The Department of Energy and the Environment, or DOEE, manages the district's MS4 permit. Currently, there are no regulations on salt in the district, so developing a smart salting training for winter maintenance staff is a proactive effort. Next slide. To give a brief overview of this project, this was an EPA-funded grant. CWP developed a smart salting training for the district's winter maintenance professionals. This training included topics such as calibration, anti-icing, pre-wetting, application rates, monitoring and tracking, and equipment handling. The training materials that were developed included an agenda, a slide deck with talking points, and a quiz to test the knowledge of the audience members. And the goal of this training would be to reduce the impacts of excess chloride on local waterways, as well as on public health and infrastructure. So ideally, this project is the first phase of a 3-part plan. The first phase, like I mentioned, was this project, developing the training materials. And the second phase would be to actually deliver the training materials to the snow team. And the third phase would be to have a train the trainer program so that the district can continue to deliver this training annually. I want to emphasize that this project was a collaborative effort between ourselves at CWP, DPW, DOEE, and our subject matter experts, DW Claunch. We at CWP were the grant holders for this project, and we contracted our subject matter expert, DW Claunch, who are the smart salting training experts that put together this training material. We were sure to include DPW and DOEE at all stages of this project, having clear communication between all groups and getting perspectives directly from DPW and DOEE was important to ensure that this training was personalized to meet the district's needs. Next slide. The target audience for this training, as mentioned, is the district snow team, but within that, we wanted to create a slide deck that could encompass and be used for both the decision makers and the operators. So it'll cover all of the bases, but could also be modified as needed if presenting to one group and not the other. This way, everyone is on the same page about the overall messages. Next, I'm just going to highlight a few of the topics that are covered in this training. The training starts with emphasizing the impacts of winter storms on budgets, infrastructure, and the environment. We all know the benefits of not oversalting both economically and environmentally, but it can be a balancing act to ensure public safety as well. Next, the training will cover these best management practices, also known as smart salting practices. So effective application strategies, equipment calibration, facilities management, training operators, and keeping records and monitoring trends. This training will also talk about treatment decisions. Plowing and other types of removal are the first line of defense when de-icing, but the 4 R's remind us to be effective and efficient, and what smart salting is actually about, which is the right material and the right amount at the right place in the right time. As I mentioned a couple slides ago, the equipment calibration is an important smart salting practice that will be covered in this training. So it's going to include when to calibrate and why calibration is important. And the calibration portion of this training also includes a hands-on field exercise. So that was just a quick overview of some of the topics covered in this training. Now let's talk about next steps and the future of this training. Going back to that 3-step plan I mentioned earlier, we've completed the development of these training materials, which was the first step. So the next step would be to have this training delivered by subject matter experts to the SNOW team. Through discussions with DOEE and DPW, the training was formatted to be about half a day, which would align with their existing trainings. And as I mentioned earlier, this training encompasses both decision makers and operators as the audience. So that when the training does get delivered, it was proposed to have one training available for the SNOW team in the early spring or after the winter season, and to provide operators with up to 3 trainings in the early fall or before the winter season. This next step does not have funding yet, but we are in talks with DOEE to find funding for it. So while this step is currently on hold, this is our current vision for the future of this training. And thank you all for listening. My contact information is provided here. And with that, I'll just pass it back to Renee. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. All right, so now I can get my PowerPoint to work. There we go. So you've learned what the regional governments are doing, which is great, but you're probably not going to have to calibrate your salt truck. So what can you do to make a difference? So the next few slides, I have about 3 minutes to talk about it. I'm going to go through it real fast, but I'm going to try to give you some tools and tips to make a difference in your own watershed. The first thing you could do is shovel. Shovel often and shovel early. That's the best way to get rid of snow. And then if you do have to salt very lightly, and I'll show you what lightly looks like in a minute. And then once it's done its job, it's kept everyone safe, sweep it up. Today, it's beautiful outside. It's supposed to rain tomorrow and Friday. Today would be a great day to go outside and just sweep up that salt, and then you can use it for our next storm. So like I said, use the correct amount of salt. There's an image on the screen of the happy face salting where the little granules are about 3 inches apart, and then the sad face salting on the right. That's way too much salt. It's not increasing safety. It's just creating more pollution in our waterways. And then another way that you can use less salt is to use birdseed. Birdseed is great for traction. Also during the winter, the birds are kind of hungry, so you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone by adding some birdseed. And I'm going to stick with that analogy because it's great for that subject. And then the other kind of magic trick you can do, you'll see on your screen, put a tarp down on the parts of your house that get pretty icy or snowy after a storm. It's like magic. There's nothing there, and you don't need to salt it off. And then also, very importantly, spread the word. Let your neighbors know, let your family know, let your friends know about what you learned on this webinar about our oversalting issue. We can use winter salts. We just need to use it smartly, and we need to use less. And also talk to businesses. So I gave some examples of how you can change your salting habits. Maybe you don't live in a single family house with a sidewalk that you need to salt. Maybe you're in an apartment. Give your apartment manager information about being winter salt smart. Mention that they should probably hire a winter maintenance professional that has been trained in winter salt practices. And then if you want to get more involved, which I always suggest that you do, join the Salt Watch program through the Isaac Walton League and they will provide you with some monitoring kits, monitoring information, and go out to your local streams and see what the impact is from all this winter salt in your local stream. And that's it. We are wrapping it up right on time. So here's your speakers. At this point, I'm going to pass it back over to Allison.
Right. Look at that. Made it through here. And I am pleased to note that while people were presenting, even though Renee, it was your screen share, everybody's face came up. So I know we were just winging it with that, but glad the technology worked with us. I am watching in the control room that the YouTube live stream is just like a couple minutes behind where we're at. So I'm just chatting a little bit to take up a little downtime. And then hopefully we'll have some questions. So if anybody has questions right now, you can feel free to put them into the chat, or you can drop them into my email. I'll put my email in the chat again, wisaltwise@gmail.com. I did see from, let's see, I think Michael joined in, your executive director, Renee. He said that he was not able to get the chat to work, but did email me. So Michael, anybody that isn't able to access the chat, I don't know if it has to do sometimes if you're signed into YouTube or not, but feel free to drop questions either place. So we've got our first one here from Tom. I'll just read this. The stormwater pond I monitor every few days is showing twice the conductivity levels this January as last for comparable snow ice events. The dominant desalting agent appears to be halite, which is salt. So sodium chloride. I guess conductivity in one stream has hit 55,000 microsiemens per centimeter. She's saying is the equivalent of seawater. Yeah, not good there, Tom. So yeah, it sounds like Tom's in Manassas, Virginia, doing some monitoring. I don't know if anybody from the panel wants to comment at all.
I'm curious where. I would be interested to get a Salt Watch volunteer out there tracking it more regularly. And I think my initial thought would maybe be that there's a salt pile closely upstream that is impacting that, because that's very worrying.
Yeah, Tom did say, I'm going back through the chat, that he's a Virginia master naturalist and volunteer water monitor for the Prince William Soil and Water Conservation District. But Tom, maybe you can, just email me some contact information and or just email me, I can put you in touch with Rebecca, and we can try to dig into that a little bit more. I've kind of heard, through the grapevine of some similar situations where, improper storage has led to some really big spikes that is quite salty. Mary also, let's see, has said, we've seen stormwater ponds in our watershed contribute hundreds of milligrams per liter to our creeks, especially during summer low flows. Sandra said, are we able to see the slide again about brine usage from Jason's section of the presentation? I didn't get to capture notes from that slide quickly enough. So Renee, are you able to bring that up?
Yes, let me pull that up real fast.
I think that was was it an advantages of brine slide?
Give me a second. There's a lot of slides to
All
go
right.
through.
Yeah, there's a lot of slides. Yeah, so you can bring that up. Tom did say okay, so he got the message there. Rebecca, I was wondering if you would share a link for the Virginia training video. I think you said there was like an in-person thing, but then there also was a video, and if that's available, I'd love to put that link in the chat. I tried to keep up with all the links. Jason, you did a great job of having those QR codes, and then I tried to grab the QR code and drop the link in there. But here's the advantages of brine slide. Hopefully, Sandra, this is meeting your needs. If you have any other questions, you can drop those in the chat.
And I would say not necessarily specifically listed on there, but the big advantage is that brine, compared to a granular application, the way it's mixed and applied, ends up being about a 20 to 25% reduction in salt compared to a granular application. But it also puts that protective barrier down there and helps that ice from really tightly bonding to the surface. And when we can do that, it makes removal easier. And it also will help us really decrease the amount of ice melters that we need post-storm event for that final cleanup. So there's a lot of really good reasons why we could want to use brine. And there's also a couple of disadvantages that are mostly related around weather and whether sometimes we can't apply them ahead of time.
Yeah, and I did just drop into the chat a link to the Wisconsin Saltwise page on brine, which has, Jason, like you just said, kind of an anti-icing chart, like a go, no go. Like there are lots of circumstances where brine doesn't make sense, right? It's a great tool, but you don't go after every problem with your favorite hammer. So I dropped that in the chat. I'm also gonna link to our Wednesday webinars. We've got a lot of webinars, many of them that discuss the benefits of brine and brine blends and brine application and brine making. So lots of brine resources out there. Speaking of resources, Amy asked if there are any resources in Northern Virginia for applicator training aside from the NVRC.
Well, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, but those that work in Virginia are able to take part in the Maryland training, correct?
That's correct. They can participate if there's some sort of tuition help from the Maryland Department of the Environment for that training. Participants outside of the state of Maryland may not qualify for that help with the tuition costs, but it is open to anyone from any region to attend the training.
And we're also hoping to hopefully have future trainings within Virginia as well in future years. So depending on funding opportunities, that's something to look out for in the future.
And yeah, I did just get a message from Kathy here. Anyone is welcome to participate in the Maryland trainee. So, right. Looks like Kathy also noted that salt remains in the watershed for a long time in the groundwater. So, right. Trying to see if I'm getting all the questions from all the other places here. Sandra said, perfect, got it. Thank you. Thank you everyone for all the great information about brine. Amy said, wonderful, thanks. So I think we're caught up on questions. I'll give people another minute. And then if any come in afterwards, I'll direct them, Renee, to you and the crew here. But yeah, I thank all of you for coming on. Yeah, I definitely, in my mind, like I'm thinking about, we're developing these different trainings in different places, and, like with Allison, the need there of like, or desire for like a more personalized training, but then also if the dollars go towards the development of the training and now there aren't dollars lined up to actually give the training, it's like, sometimes does it make sense for us to all kind of create our own, or to kind of have those shared resources or something that's maybe geared a little bit towards somebody else, but at least get it out there. So there's some training. I think some future conversations a little bit more about just pooling, what we have already. Scott Kinman from this morning did a great job talking about the New Hampshire trainings. And I think also there might be little tidbits, that we could kind of take from one another to continue to improve what we all have.
Yeah, I will say the Maryland training is very heavily borrowed from all of you guys up north. So we really appreciate all the work that you guys did to help us make our own training in Maryland.
Sure. And Amy just said, excellent presentation. Thanks to everyone. All right. Well, with that, I think we'll call it today. Thank you so much, everybody. And thanks for everybody who is joining in. Tomorrow is our final webinar for Winter Salt Week 2025. We'll be looking at policy solutions in a variety of states, from New Hampshire to Ohio to Minnesota. So hope to see many of you on tomorrow. And yeah, just say hello in the chat. So with that, thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.